Have you ever heard the term all is fair in love and war? It's a term that implies that normal moral rules and boundaries do not apply when pursuing intense desires, conflicts, or consequences. And there's another term. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. That's Newton's third law of motion. Look, if you make it your business to say the first insult, make the first motion, to enter into someone's personal space, brandish an object, or make an unwelcome advancement towards a person, or have the nerve to touch another person without his or her consent, please be prepared for reciprocation. And right or wrong, you do not get to choose how that person responds, because in a world that leads with survival of the fittest, shout out to Mob Deep, or don't start no shit, it won't be no shit. Shout out to the young bloods. And of course, people are out here fearing for their lives. Just ask the police. Okay, I know. That's no way to start a show. So I'll start over. And y'all know I will be right back. Well, hello, and welcome to In Your Ear Radio. I am your host, Latoya. As always, it is my pleasure to be present with you on this beautiful, fine Saturday. It is so hot, y'all. I am burning up. I'm hot. I don't know where you are right now. Let me see what the weather's like here in Vegas, because I didn't even check. I did go outside, and it was a little warm. I'm sure it's in the 90s. I'm not real sure. Shout out to all of you guys who are probably watching in other places. Shout out to Colorado. I see you genuinely poised. Thank you for joining me in the chat. YouTube. I see you, Shanta. Thank you for joining me in this chat. Happy Saturday to you as well. And let's see, we got GB as well, being the first one in the chat. He back like he never left. I heard that. Thank you for joining me as well on YouTube. And for those of you who are watching on Facebook as well, I appreciate you all. Don't be shy. Please join me in the conversation. We always have some thought-provoking conversations to have, and we're going to get into it. So let me check the weather and share my video with my group while you guys settle in. And for those of you who watch later, I appreciate y'all too, because I see the numbers, after the show. For those who aren't live to come back later, yeah, I appreciate y'all as well. Why can't I find the weather right quick? And then I'm having technical difficulties, y'all. So we're gonna get through this. I said a little prayer like I always do before I start. And so I hope that works out. It says 81 degrees. And I said I was gonna share this video. So let me do that now while you all are hopping on and hopping in. Ooh, it is hot outside, y'all. It is hot inside. Let me just say that, because I am burning up. Probably because I've been tugging with this. I think I shared it to the right thing. I don't know where I just shared it to, y'all. Let me try this again. I think I shared it to myself. Anyway, I'll get back to that. I won't worry about it. So yeah, messing around with this system running slow. So it's not me, it's the system, but hopefully everything is back on track and we good to go, because we got a lot to get into and talk about. So let's get into it, right? If you guys saw, I'm definitely going to touch on the conversation that is trending. It's a big conversation happening right now about Karmelo Anthony, the young boy who is now 19, who at 17 stabbed I want to say teammate, but it was from another school. In defense, in his to get into that conversation, and not necessarily litigate it, but just to talk about, the discrepancies, the hypocrisies, and, and hear what your takeaways are as well. And so that's what I want to get into. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about a few other things. I know first of all, let me just say I'm not even gonna front. I'm not even gonna front on y'all and act like I be into sports. I have not watched one NBA game, but I'm listening to the conversations. I'm hearing all the excitement trending on social media with people really, really excited, especially New Yorkers and people from New Jersey and just that area, that neck of the woods, about how the New York Knicks are doing. I know Spike Lee is just over the moon because that man is a diehard, right? I teased last week because once I realized that they were, had the potential to actually win the championship. I went in and looked to see when was their last championship, and it was before I was born. Okay, let me just tell you that. And I said, I'm just teasing, but I just think that's interesting for those who have been fans through and through. Y'all are real fans, not them fair weather fans that just, pull up when everything is good. So shout out to those real fans. But yeah, so the Knicks finals is here. I don't know if you guys are watching it. They've been going up against the Spurs, San Antonio. But the last game, it was pretty interesting. That was another thing that was a popular conversation because I heard a lot of people who were really into the game turned it off at halftime because the Knicks were losing so bad. They were like 29 points behind. And so those people, they were saying how they just got sad and just gave up and went to bed or turned to the TV and watched something else. Kind of reminds me of how it was during election night, right? When you're rooting for your team, you're rooting for the candidate, and then you see the numbers keep changing and changing and changing. It doesn't look like it's going to be in your favor. So I know what that feeling is like, and I empathize with those who were struggling, but they missed the big comeback. They missed the big comeback. It was a 29-point lead over when it got into halftime. They went ahead and took over. I don't know how that works with the numbers. Did anybody win? Did it make it easier for people to win, or did they lose, or how did that work? I know some people was crying in the car. What was his name? One of the guys was crying in the car. He's an actor. Anyway. I'm getting that off Friday. You're going to cry in the car. But yeah, so they ended up winning the game, taking it back with a 29-point lead. That was the biggest in finals history. So the Spurs led 76-49. And then they took over at the second half. And that was great. That was great. Good, exciting basketball for those who are into it. I'm happy for you. Interesting though, the game prior to that, which a lot of people were very upset about, is that y'all's president pulled up to it. And I just, it's just adding insult to injury, to me, to even think that in the middle of the wars that this man has incited, that he would pull up to an NBA basketball game. And rumor has it, he doesn't even watch basketball, which is crazy. But, people were not excited about him being there, mainly because of, not agreeing with his interests, where he stood on certain things, and more so because it was a hassle. He made it bad for a lot of people in small businesses in the surrounding areas around Madison Square Garden. For those who celebrate, a lot of people be out there selling T-shirts. They have a lot of stands and things up. I hope my screen isn't freezing. I apologize if it is, but they have, a lot of people make a lot of money, parking and all of these things, ways for people to profit. He took that away from them because, the Secret Service has to come out. And so they blocked off, I think 8 blocks of the roadway so that this man could be present, sit in the suite and sleep. Right? Y'all saw it. He was lying off. This is a man who called the former president Sleepy Biden and made all these jokes. But here he is, always caught on camera sleeping. And then, of course, you have his minions, or AKA goons, defending him, saying he wasn't asleep. I guess he was just reading his eyelids. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so he brought the bad luck and broke a winning streak. So the New York Knicks was on a 13-game winning streak when this president pulled up and messed it up for everybody, right? He messed it up for everybody. They had, in comparison to previous teams, they were about to make history. Boy. So what would have happened had he not interrupted and they had won again? They would have made history by what was the last team, you guys? Again, my screen is freezing, so I'm trying to keep up with the information in front of me. But so the last team that beat them out, or that had a winning streak, that the Knicks was close to beating out, was what team was that? I can't even remember now. Yeah. But we'll get back to that. But they were on a run. They were second to another team, and I'll look up the name so that I can get that for you. I don't know why I don't have it in front of me. it's irking me now because I just read it and now I don't see it in front of me. So that is so weird. But yeah, so what was it? Anyways, it was bad luck. And a lot of people saying by the president being there, y'all's president being present, and the bad energy, and then the history that his father, Fred Trump, if you guys don't know, who was a KKK member, had also rallied at the Madison Garden Arena. They said that back in what was it, 1927? That was in May. Reportedly Memorial Day, he marched with over 1,000 men in supporting the Ku Klux Klan. But that was kind of debunked. They said it wasn't necessarily at the Madison Square Garden. And I went and looked further into it because I knew that the Madison Square Garden had been rebuilt at least a couple of times. It was reported 4 times. So this was the last construction of the Madison Square Garden in I want to say 1968, if I'm not mistaken, late the 60s. And this is the same building. But prior to that, he did actually march. We don't know for sure if it was in Madison Square Garden because there's no record of that. But he did in 1927. His father, Fred Trump, being a KKK member, marched with thousands of men, 1,000 or more men in Jamaica, Queens, and that was in the Queensboro in New York City. Again, when I think about these things, just leading up to the conversation we're going to have is just how. Again, I'm saying his father, a Ku Klux Klan member, went into Jamaica, Queens. And when you think of Jamaica, Queens, what do you think of? You think of people of color. You think of Black people. You think of people from all over the world who live in that community that don't look like him. But they went into that community to march. Just messing with people, starting stuff with people that ain't bothering them. They drinking their water, minding their business. And his father pulled up. His father was arrested. Because he would not listen to the police. The police told them to leave. 7 other people were arrested along with him. But because he didn't leave, he was arrested later. The charges was dropped and he was never formally in charge. But just to give you a background of who y'all's president is and his roots, where he comes from, where his ideology may come from, similar to what I think we're going to, allude to when we talk about this tragic incident that happened that cost the life of a young boy, 2 to be exact, because 1 is incarcerated and 1 is in the ground. So we're going to get into that as well. But, I just wanted to shout out them New York Knicks because they're doing their thing. And let me just get into my notes here because my screen is still freezing. I don't know what's going on out here. But I know the devil is a liar and I am not going to be bothered with it. But just so you do know, they were saying that the bad energy with his dad having been there again, Fred Trump, former KK member and the father of Donald Trump, rallying at the Madison Square Garden. Didn't necessarily happen, but it was in Jamaica, Queens. There has been rallies there by Nazi members at the Madison Square Garden. As early as 1939, that was during the Holocaust, you guys. So remember, there were people being put in gas chambers at this time, all way across the waters. And there were people marching, supporting that. They were walking around with big George Washington signs, honoring the first president of the United States. And if you guys don't know, the first president of the United States is also historically known for having the most enslaved Africans out of all presidents during that time, of all people, pretty much. And just to put things into perspective, every white person did not own slaves. The majority of people majority of white people were just as poor. They were poor. It was just as it is now, where you have an elite few of white men or women that are wealthy. So it wasn't every white man, or woman owned, enslaved people. They were just as poor and, mad at the system as they are now, thinking that Mexicans are taking their jobs because they, the rich, wealthy men were getting free labor and that left them poor. But again, because they liked the idea and was sold on the idea of the commodity of whiteness, they didn't mind being so poor as long as they were not Black, because Black seemed to be not a good thing. And I could agree with them in the 16 to 186500s. I could agree in that situation. But Black is beautiful and we love it. But, it was a lot of talk about that guy showing up. And I'm glad that the Knicks are back on a winning streak. Again, he really made it bad for a lot of people. What really got me on this thing is how expensive the seats are. $6,000 for a seat. Like, I understand some people that's just pocket change, but really $6,000, the minimum cost, and that could be in the nosebleeds. Rumor has it, I didn't go do the Google search, but prior the cost for for the tickets, I guess during regular season are still, they're, I guess, high, but averaging about $213. So that's really crazy. That's so these NBA tickets for the New York Knicks are 40%, 46% higher than the next closest team. That's the Los Angeles Lakers, even at their base rate of $215. So they're already more expensive than a lot of other teams. But it was just interesting to me that the tickets cost so damn much. Good Lord. And then, of course, just reporting the news, y'all's president seemed to think that that was fine. Like he, kind of paraphrasing what he said, like, oh, well, if you broke, then you can't come. But again, he made it very, very inconvenient for those who would make a lot of money, reportedly could pull in a year's salary had they had access to the perimeter of Madison Square Garden. But they worked it out. They worked it out. But speaking of high ticket prices, shout out to the Las Vegas Raiders head coach. His name is Pete Carroll. He's made a public acknowledgement that the challenges of getting a strong home crowd at the Allegiant Stadium, and partly due to the team's poor record and the league's most expensive ticket prices, that the prices should come down a little bit, that the fans should be the priority, and that the price of tickets should come down. And I like that idea. Now, originally, when I looked into this story, what led me to this story is I saw a headline on social media that said that, this coach was in some way introducing $11 tickets for the Raiders games. And so I couldn't find any truth to that when I did go and search. And what 10K of nosebleeds? Oh no, that's wow. So GB is saying no, that is so expensive. Yeah. So the Raiders lead coach is saying, he's with reducing the cost because the fans is what make the team. And it's true, you guys. The fans do make it. They make all of their money off of the working class, not off the wealthy. Think about it. Even with these stadiums, it's a lot of that money that these stadiums are built with come from tax dollars. And then we turn around as locals. We've already poured into our tax money into building these arenas and stadiums for these athletes to make millions, and their owners and the coaches and everybody to make all this great money, and people who have access to the venues, the concessions, and things of that nature. We pay for that. We pay into that with our tax dollars, but we don't benefit because then we have to turn around and buy tickets. And the thing about that is, here in Vegas, there are some casinos and hotels that will charge locals for parking. And I don't think that's right. I don't think it's right because, again, our tax dollars are pouring into their infrastructure. And so, even with that being said, you shouldn't be double charging locals for patronizing these businesses, because to be honest, and I can't speak for every local here in Las Vegas, but I don't really be on the strip unless Nas is performing or if I have family in town and they want to check it out. But a lot of times I say, y'all go have fun and I'll see you at the house, because it's just an attraction. And I've been here my entire life, watched it go up, blow up, and been rebuilt. So it's not a big deal for me, but I don't want to have to pay to go somewhere. And, it's just this whole scam these wealthy people have done, because you think about it, you're paying to park, and then you turn around and you're paying the employees, right? Because you have to pay whatever the price is to eat. And, the prices are jacked up if you want on the strip or into these hotels and casinos. And then you're tipping, because these waiters and waitresses and dealers and those people who work in the hospitality industry, valet, they're getting paid minimum wage, most of them, and they're being paid low wages. And so these companies, they done put a whole scam on us, y'all. They got us paying for everything that they didn't build, from our tax dollars to, parking fees, to tips, to paying overpriced, paying for food, even ticket sales, all these service fees. We're paying for all of this, and they're just pocketing the money. And so that's really crazy. But anyway, just speaking of sports, if you guys haven't been following, just the World Cup, I wanted to say it was the Olympics, but they're starting to deny people of color into the United States who are traveling here for the events. And again, this is a World Cup. Participants are being denied entry into the United States. It's a Somali referee, for one, who would have been the first from his country to officiate a World Cup, was turned away at the U.S. border just days before Thursday's start of the global soccer tournament taking place in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. So it's happening. It's happening to not just this particular person, but it's becoming a trend with people of color. They are turning them around. You got to consider these people are paying a lot of money for hotels. They're paying money for transportation, flights, whatever it is they're doing. And they're being hassled. What's that all about? What's that all about? And again, before we get into the conversation surrounding the incarceration, the inflated incarceration of Carmelo Anthony, um, I wanted to, talk about some other things. So shout out to one of my uh, IG friends who sent me this video talking about Drewski. Have you guys seen the latest video Drewski put out? Um, and if you guys aren't familiar with Drewski, he Okay, I think I'm back. If you guys can hear me, let me know in the chat. I'm not on the computer, so this is awkward. I'm sorry, you guys. I don't know what's going on, but let me see. It's back on. Okay. So my screen froze. If you can hear and see me, my screen froze. I cannot get back in. So I'm talking to you from a different device. If you can hear and see me, okay, I'm back. Okay, so this is going to be a little different. um, because my notes are on a different screen. But thank you guys for your patience. This is so weird. I think I had this incident once before where my screen froze, and that was a while ago. And we were able to get back in and keep going. This is the longest it's ever done that. So thank you for your patience while I try to get back in here. So we were talking about, the Knicks. We were talking about just the history of y'all's president. We also were going to get into Drewski, who had a video and audio that I wanted to play for you guys. I'm not going to be able to do because I don't have an additional device unless I can get back into my PC. So again, I apologize. We might have to just try to do this again at another time, unfortunately. I don't know what's going on with my system, but thank you. Yeah, okay, so they're telling me the internet service is crazy everywhere lately. That sucks. But yeah, so the video about Drewski was pretty much just mocking um, entertainers that are being basically outsourced from outside of the country. When I say entertainers, I'm talking about black entertainers to be specific. And he did a whole mockery of that. Similar to what, if you guys don't remember, what was it, Weird Al Yankovic? I'm not sure if he's still alive, but he used to do a lot of mockery of different entertainers and videos and performances of that sort. And so he kind of went in mocking that. And a friend of mine sent it to me on IG and basically asking, what are my thoughts about that? Because he said that he was basically doing this um, because of the influx of people outsourcing black actors from different countries. And, I guess he felt a way about it. He said that Hollywood was, letting these people who didn't have the lived experience of being here in the United States come to the United States and act like they had a lived experience from the United States. And so, again, I'm paraphrasing. Hopefully, I can get the audio up. But with him saying that, I felt a way. Just the simple fact that he was, talking about the fact that these actors were acting like that's what actors do, right? And you guys have to remember, the way that I think, I look at black people as a whole. I don't separate us based on where we're from. I know we have different lived experiences, and that other people in different parts of the world that look like us may not necessarily appreciate us or respect us in the same way, or even associate themselves with us in the same way as black people. But as a whole, I don't think that speaks for everybody. So I don't, you know, just having whole like, well, it's black American versus everybody. I still put us in the same pot. I put us in the same pot because when we're driving up and down the street, whether you're from Africa, whether you're from the UK, whether you're from Canada, wherever you're from, you're driving up and down the street. The police is not going to differentiate you and me based on where we were born. You still look black to them. You're going to be treated as such. And so I wanted to get your takeaway on that. If I can get the clip up. And also, I need to get my notes because I definitely want to get into the conversation discussing um, um, Kamala, uh, Carmelo Anthony. I'm sorry. I'm a little distracted because of this computer and not having my notes in front of me. And I feel like I've been jinxed because I was just listening to a lady that was also doing a show and she didn't have her notes, but she had a co-host and guest, and so it worked out, to her advantage. So we're gonna get through this, and if not, we'll start it back up. I'll just start it back up. Um, and that's probably what we're going to do. So just give me a few minutes to get that in. But what is your takeaway? How do you guys feel about the actors that are coming from other places, mainly from like the UK, British actors and the sorts? How do you guys feel about them coming in and getting these top roles in the Hollywood arena? Like, does that bother you? Do you feel like they're taking away jobs from Black Americans? Do you feel like that Hollywood is discriminated against Black Americans? And why do you think they're doing it? Why do you think that Hollywood, and I'm being specific by saying Hollywood, because that's what Drewski was pointing his finger at, how Hollywood was bringing in these black actors to, you know, take the place or take work away from American actors. How do you guys feel about that? Do you think that's fair? Do you think it's wrong? Do you support or do you not support? Black actors coming into America, getting these top roles. I mean, you think about someone like Idris Elba, right? There's a lot of big actors out there that are doing their thing. They're doing their thing, and I don't see no women complaining about Idris being over here acting. But it is a thing. I've heard people talk about it, and I've heard black men complain about it in particular, not necessarily black women, but I've heard black men complain about it. So I do want to get your takeaway on that. I'm still in the chat trying to see your comments, and it looks like I can see some of them. Shanta was responding to us talking about Trump and the whole Knicks game. I think she was alluding to that, and she was saying that y'all give Trump too much power. They lost because the other team won. At the end of the day, it's night. You know what I'm saying? I feel you. I feel you. But yeah, she said they lost because the other team won. Did his disrupt business? Did he disrupt business and fan experience? Yes. So you and Whoopi have the same point of view when it comes to Donald Trump being president and that not having any effect on the how the Knicks played. But I can tell you now, as simple as I can make this look, as easy as I can make this look, my computer freezing up has an effect on how I'm flowing right now. And it's a whole energy thing because when you have things in place, um, and you have things set up to go a certain way, it can affect your game. It can get you off your dean. If you're really really good at what you do and you practice and you have great coaches and trainers, then you shouldn't be knocked off your dean. But the reality is, a lot of people, it's an art of war, right? People intentionally will try to knock you off your dean and distract you in order to take an advantage. So I hear you. I hear you. They did lose, but did that energy affect them? Because they picked back up. I mean, they put in they got superpowers when that man went there. And I think energy is a real thing. I think energy is a real thing to the degree where you may not even know a person's in a room, but you can feel that they're there, and you turn your head and boom, voila, someone that you wasn't aware that was in the room is actually in the room. So that's my takeaway. Yeah, I agree though. I don't want to give him that much power, because the other pushback on that subject was that had the Knicks won, then the pushback would have been that uh, y'all's president would have been out here saying, that's, yeah, because I was president, they did great. You know what I mean? So either way, it was a lose-lose situation. It was a lose-lose situation. GB is in the YouTube chat. He says, I don't have a problem um, most of the roles are an old school look, and these UK actors have strong strong African genes, and they're great actors. I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. And again, I don't separate us. I look at us as the same. And I think that when we talk about giving people power, I think we've given we've given white people too much power over colorism, controlling how we feel about each other based on so many different things. If it's not our skin color, it's the way we speak, where we live, how much money we make. We've given they pretty much put this into our society and use this to divide us, and it has helped to conquer us in a way that, as long as we stay distracted and focus on things that really probably don't matter as much, because why should we care about who Hollywood is hiring when we have Tyler Perry Studios and other people with deep pockets that can create their own studios and build your own thing? We don't need to be mad or begging them for the resources that we need, or the things that we want. If they don't give us a seat at the table, what do, you guys? We build our own. So I think in that respect that we're giving these people too much power. Hollywood, to be example, since we're talking about Drewski doing a parody, mimicking the actors, the British actors, and things of that nature. Yeah, I think, yeah. Goodness, this is so awkward talking to you from this device versus my regular device, and I appreciate your patience. But I think what I might do is just log off because I honestly cannot see my notes. Um, Yeah. I'm so disappointed because I see the comments, I see you guys on Facebook, and I see you on YouTube trying to have a conversation about what I definitely want to get into, amongst other things that I wanted to discuss. One being Carmelo Anthony and the verdict where he was sentenced to 35 years. I have a lot to say about that, and I'm sure a lot of you do. I think that the emotions are high when we have this conversation. Um, Thank you, Genuinely Poised says that I look great though. And you love me. I love you too. Have a beautiful Saturday. I'm going to do that. I don't need my notes. Okay, so I kind of do because I got to remember what came next. But I'm gonna. Cause you believe in me, I'm gonna do the same and believe in myself. Um, so again, talking about Drewski, the other thing I wanted to mention is on June 12th, it was in 1963, Medgar Evers' life was snuffed from him in front of his two young children and his wife as he stood in his driveway. A man shot him in the back. I want to say in his back, but it could have been the back of his head after returning as a NAACP secretary to register people to vote. He also had created T-shirts that they were using at the time that said "Jim Crow must go," and he was basically just anti-segregation and pro-civil rights. And he was an activist who first was a veteran, a World War II veteran, and then got his college degree, and then joined the NAACP. And again, yesterday he yesterday was June 12th, but this was in 1963 that he lost his life at the age of 37. And I just bring that up to remind you all, for anyone who tells you that voting doesn't matter and that it's not important and that it's not significant, people have lost their lives and continue to lose their lives and their freedom and just their peace of mind because of this. I want to remind you that the KKK was created when civil rights was given, awarded, was fought and won by Black people. That's when the KKK came, and that's when you had people like Fred Trump, Donald Trump's dad in 1925, marching in Jamaica, New York, protesting because yeah, they don't like the idea of people being free. They do not like the idea of people being free. And just to get into that even more, um, the problem when we get into this conversation about Carmelo Anthony, I think a lot of people want to just say, "Oh, well, what he did was wrong, and why did he come to track me with a weapon?" And I'm going to debunk a lot of that because number one, he did not have a weapon; he had a tool that he used for track. I think it was specifically for like tuning your track cleats or something of that nature, but it wasn't a knife. So people that keep repeating it was a knife, and it wasn't at the school. Okay, it was a tool he had. First of all, he was minding his business and drinking his water, and it was a rainy day. And one of his so-called friends that he was with, reportedly, allegedly, said, "Hey, let's go get up under this tent since it's raining." And once he got in here, these entitled boys thought it was a problem and told him to leave. And these are kids. Again, I'm gonna say boys. So none of them owned the tent. None of them had control over the tent. So what do kids do when there's a problem? They go find an adult. That's how I raised my child. If there's a problem, you go get an adult. You go find your parents. And so that's what he should have done. Still trying to get this PC up, you guys. It's slow too. So that's two things. And that didn't happen. And the point I'm making is we be minding our business and then people mess with us. And you don't know how many times he done stepped over some shit in his life. And then today was just not the day. Today was that day. Shout out to, what was Oprah's name in The Color Purple? I want to say Sophia, but I can't remember. Was she Sophia? Where today was just not that day. We all can get in snap mode. Who was that? I'm thinking of the rapper Snap Mode. Anyway, we can all get in snap mode. And today was just not that day that this boy was going to allow some 6'1", 210-pound boy with a twin, because it was double trouble, and several other boys to bully him. Like he was going to stand his ground. It's okay for George Zimmerman to stand his ground while Trayvon Martin was minding his business and drinking his water. But when a Black man, woman, or child does it, we're being aggressive. We're taking it too far. All of the things that we say about Black people when we do what we have to do to try to live to see another day, to try to make it home. And so the story begins with that. So the boy who invited him to, hey, let's go get up under the tent because it was raining, was videotaping all this. And he was cackling while these kids were intimidating him and telling him to leave. And he said, "No, I ain't going nowhere. Make me." Again, these are kids. So in that situation, if they really felt like they should not have been, he should not have been there, or they felt like he was a thief, because there was a whole interview done, and again, I got a bunch of clips that I'm not going to be able to play unless this comes up, and I'll replay this show. I will. But he he was videotaping while all of this was happening, and they were telling him, that he needed to leave. Why didn't you go get an adult to escort him out? But anyways, on this interview, the twin brother who survived was saying that, they were telling him to leave because our stuff was in there. And the mom interjected, the mother of the deceased said, yeah, because their personal items were in there. So she was justifying the fact that this young black I think he's 5'10", 130 pounds. I think I don't even think he's 5'10". I think he's 5'8", Carmelo Anthony. Young black boy in his tracksuit out there to run track. Okay, let's keep in mind that he had a very high GPA. I want to say it was I can't remember the exact number, but he had a high GPA. He had already been accepted into college and was on his way, was working 2 jobs. I don't think he needed anything that was in your bag. He had 2 parents at home living in a $900,000 house, whether they owned it or paid rent. They was paying to live there. I don't think he was worried, but that's the preconceived notion that you think that because he's black, he got to steal your shit. And so they had this idea that, he doesn't want to be here. And maybe they really thought he was still their stuff. I mean, ask the police. They fear for their life too, right? They think we doing stuff that we not doing. We just minding our business and drinking our water. And these are the kind of things that we have to deal with because people have their racist preconceived prejudices about us. So for anybody who's just joining me on Facebook and YouTube, I just want to let you know that I had to get on another device because I froze up. And I'm ad-libbing today. I guess that's what it's supposed to be. I'm ad-libbing right now until I can get my computer back up and read my notes. But we're talking about Carmelo Anthony, and if things look different right now, I'm just letting you know that we have some technical difficulties over here, and this is how it is. Shout out to Sherry. I see you. Also, thank you for joining me in Facebook. But that's the backstory to what you're looking at right now, and why you don't see, all of the comments and everything that normally come up when people are sharing their thoughts as well. But again, you think of all the scenarios, when you think about a Trayvon Martin walking up the street, talking to his girl, just having a good night at his dad's house. You think about how Zimmerman said, "Oh, you don't belong here," and when it started messing with Boyd, and so not Zimmerman, but Trayvon Martin was getting the best of him, and so now he decided he got to die, and everybody on the jury and everybody in that community that didn't look like Trayvon Martin thought that was okay. And we see all the videos trending everywhere. We can't go into high rises. We can't go into stores as black people without some Karen or some weirdo saying we don't belong here. Like, what is going on around here? And then when we snap back, as I opened up talking about there's an equal and opposite reaction, or don't start nothing, won't be nothing. Like, all is fair in love and war. Like, if you come at me, you don't get to determine how I come back. What you need to do is, if you don't want no problems, don't create any, and just wave and mind your business and not bother people. So unfortunately, again, I don't condone death. Nobody comes back from death. I do think that there are some people on this planet that we would be better without. I think they're just a total menace to society, and it's making it difficult for us to just be able to live in peace and harmony. But I also understand, no one understands that this is not heaven, this is earth, and this is what it is. We got viruses on the planet. But overall, I'm not in support of people dying. I wish, it could have ended differently. I wish that boy that lost his life after attacking Carmelo would not have attacked him, would not have made it his business to tell him to get out of a tent that he didn't own. It was public grounds, or if it belonged to the school, whoever did it did not belong to the young man who was the aggressor initially. And this boy decided to defend himself against boys that was going to jump him. I have an audio of a young lady, white woman as well, whose brother, she said, I think it's been 13 years, if not longer, 17 years. His killer is just being brought to justice, but she was telling the story of how her son was jumped. And her brother was jumped 13 to 17 years ago. My memory fails me, and that's why I love my notes. But the story she tells is that he got jumped. I think it was 5 boys that beat him, and he didn't have a track tool in his bag. He didn't have anything to defend himself with, and so he paid with his life. And so she said, "What if my brother did have something, where he could have defended himself? Be it a knife, be it whatever it may have been, something that could have, been strong enough to get them off of him. Would he still be alive today? And would he been held to account and incarcerated for 35 years?" This jury took no time. Amazingly, like when I initially saw the story of Carmelo Anthony trending, My heart already sank because I already knew it was a bad look. First of all, it's Texas. Second of all, it was a white boy that was killed. Third of all, he's a black man, a black boy. And, I just know how the justice system works against black people. So, I already knew he had a long road ahead of him, but I didn't realize it was going to be a short road ahead of him. This happened in 2025. We're here in 2026. This happened just a year and a few months ago, and he's already been sentenced. He literally was charged the same day, and 3 hours later, the jury came back, not with the manslaughter, which the judge hinted to that being an option, but with murder. So if you understand technicalities when it comes to law, murder is a legal term, which means that it was intentional. You intended. You woke up that morning and said, it's gonna be a hanging tonight. You know how they do. They get up. These Ku Klux Klan members, they get together, they get in their meetings, they plan weeks and days in advance, and they get up and they drink their coffee, and they Becky's make them scrambled eggs and toast, and they put on they caps, and they put on their white sheets, and they go out and they go and to attempt murder. They go out and lynch and do whatever it is they can do, get in their police cars and pull people over on the side of the road and shoot them up. Philando Castile, even though he tells them he has a registered weapon, they go into the houses of people. They have boiling water. They have mental health issues and plead the blood of Jesus and slaughter you. You think about all of the ways in which we can't even talk a certain way, Sandra Bland, at a stoplight, because then we uppity Negroes. But that's murder, okay? When you go out and you plan to take a life, when that your intentions was to snuff somebody out, versus a homicide, which just means somebody died. And that can happen. You can be driving up the road, looking at your phone, you look up, you didn't see the person, the pedestrian in the street, you hit them. Unfortunately, that pedestrian passes, that's a homicide. You did not wake up and say, I'm gonna go out and run me over a pedestrian today. So that's the difference between murder and homicide. So you telling me you thought that this young boy with a high GPA, already accepted into college, working two jobs, has a loving mother and father, living in an affluent neighborhood, had everything going for him, lots of love, and just overall good dude, woke up and said he wanted to kill him, a twin white boy that was 6'10", 6'10", 6'1", weighing 210 pounds. You telling me jury, 12 people that were not his peers? And no, there were no black people on the jury, because I was even having a conversation with a black woman who said, yeah, it's kind of like how we have these conversations when we talk about we were having the conversations about Kamala versus Trump. Everybody was, oh, she's not black. So that came up that, oh, they said it was an all white jury, but that's not true. I said, no, they said there were no black people on the jury, which they said there was a person of color on the jury. They said that there was a Hispanic person on the jury, and they said a person of color. A person of color is anybody who's not white. Okay. Okay. So, and it's this media, y'all some punk asses, because now I'm getting mad, which I knew I would having this conversation, but y'all manipulate it because it's like you intentionally want to see this boy go down. It's something about it. You want to see this boy go down because you could have said specifically what it was instead of leaving it out in the ether for people to decide what you meant. No, there were no black people on the jury. And mind you, because I keep my ears to the street. There were people who spoke that they were present. They went to jury duty as a black woman, were asked certain questions and dismissed. The same black woman said there was a whole row of black people that were there. I forgot the number, and this is when my notes come in, so forgive me if I don't have the numbers exact, but I want to say there was at least a 500 jury pool, and maybe a handful of those were black people who were sitting on the back row, as she described it, that were never called up and questioned. And she said that those who may have been questioned, or maybe she didn't say that specifically, but there was a person who alluded to the fact that the reason why some of the black jurors may or may not, this is an attorney, I remember this specifically because you get this attorney jargon coming in because they want to think analytically about it, and they don't have the emotion, they don't have they don't tie in the racism, the systemic racism that is baked into our judicial system. They just look at the detail and they will say, well, maybe the black people that were called to jury duty didn't answer the questions correctly. So maybe one of the questions was, could you give a black boy the death penalty, and that person, that black woman, mother, child, father, says no, and so they're automatically dismissed. I can see that happening, and I can see people doing that specifically to get off jury duty, even if that's not the case of what they would do. But the other point that this person made when they said that is, you can have your feelings, because we all have our biases and we all have our feelings, and we all know what we would not do, because we know some people voted for a man who was accused of sexually assaulting people, who was accused of racial discrimination, has a long list of really awful things. But people's Christianity and their feelings on abortion would not allow them to vote for the other side. So what do? They stay mum about things and they overlook certain things. And I'm trying to get back to my point. It was on the tip of my tongue, but the point I'm making is that yes, the same people that were on that jury, those 12 people, I would bet my last dollar that they already had it made up in their minds that they would hang that black man. That they would throw the book at that black boy. And forgive me for saying man, because again, he was 17 years old and he's 19 now. If you guys know anything about the brain, I got exhibits to support it. But the reality is, the human brain does not fully develop until the age of 25 or older. So, for example, try getting insurance if you're 22 years old. It's going to be through the roof. Try renting a car. They will not rent a car to you if you're under 25. Why? Because they use that science to support them, because they think that you may make reckless decisions, as people do when the brain isn't fully formed. So I don't want to call him a man at 19, even though he, has some man qualities about him. Because a man, studies, a man stands up for himself, a man does not allow someone to bully him or force him to stand in the rain, or not fight back. So those are man qualities. But he was a boy. And I'm not, again, celebrating what happened, because it's a tragedy all the way around. It breaks my heart that that baby boy is incarcerated. I know what it feels like to have someone taken away. If you think about what slavery is, think about having someone incarcerated, where they are at the mercy of those people who run that jail system. You cannot do anything unless you break in there and some good judo, taekwondo. You got good weapons. You got a good team. But you can't do anything. It's no different from slavery, if you ask me. When it comes to somebody just taking someone away from you and you not having access to them or being able to help them in any way. Y'all, when I believe this, my computer is still trying to load. So he reacted. And he didn't just stab him 17 times. It wasn't a crime of passion where he just went in and wouldn't stop. It was one poke and he was out of there. That was enough to get them boys off him, though. Unfortunately, it was just, it kind of even reminds me, it was like a freak accident almost, if you ask me, because I think about, remember the one, the guy, he was from Australia. He had that accent or whatnot, but he would go out and into the wilderness. And I think he had the little baby girl. And anyway, he succumbed to his death in the water. A starfish stung him. A stingray stung him, not a starfish. I think it was a stingray, but I forgot his name. He was a white man from Australia somewhere. But that was a freak accident. So him poking him was just to get him off him, right? You can literally hit somebody hard enough with your fist and take them out. If you guys remember Candy from The Real Housewives, let me pay attention to the clock too. Okay, it's 3 o'clock. From Housewives, Candy, the first boyfriend that she introduced to the show, decades ago now, at least over a decade ago. He got into a fight. They had been broken up by then, but he ended up getting into a fight at a bar, and someone hit him in his head, and that took him out. He wasn't shot, he wasn't stabbed, he wasn't choked. He was literally punched. So you got people out here saying, "Oh, he could have just fought him. Why didn't he just fight?" And the thing is, if you obviously you're getting jumped, and some big old 200 and something pound white boy with a double is trying to whoop your ass, what are you gonna do? You're gonna try to get them off of you. If you were raised right, you were taught in a black home, we were raised to fight back. Shout out to David Horowitz. I know I say that a lot, and a lot of people don't know who he is, but it's an old guy that used to be on a show called Fight Back, and it was all about consumerism. How these companies was ripping people off. But I use that term, fight back. We were raised to do that. We couldn't come in the house crying about somebody bullying us. That's why there were no issues with the Gen X generation when it came to bullying. Yes, we got bullied, but what did we do? We went and got our big sisters or our big brothers or our people, or we went and practiced on how we was going to whoop some ass the next day after school when the bell rang, because that's how it went down. And so I think that's how he was taught too. And so now that, it was bad luck for the Metcalf. I don't Metcalf is his last name, is the Metcalf son. His first name I don't have in front of me because I don't have my notes. And so yeah, so he lost his life. And as unfortunate as that may be, I still feel for Kamalo. I feel like people that be messing up Kamala's name right now, because I know how to say Kamalo Anthony, but I feel like I'm saying it wrong. And I'm not doing it on purpose. It's just my tongue wants to do something different right now. And so I'm always pausing when I'm getting ready to say his name, like I want to say Camilo, but it's Kamalo Anthony. I'm just going to remind myself, the basketball player. You can say his name right. They got the same name, Latoya, Kamalo Anthony. So I feel like it's the same situation. So you even have people, and I'm listening to people say, well, it should have been manslaughter because, again, I gave you different scenarios, different terms, right? We have murder, which is a legal term that means you intentionally set out to take the life of another. Then you have homicide, where incidentally someone died, and then you have manslaughter, which is on the same hills of homicide. Incidentally someone died. Given the example of Candy's boyfriend or ex-boyfriend at the time, the person that hit him in the head with his fist, I seriously doubt and would argue in a courtroom that man didn't intend to take his life with his fist, but his life was taken with his fist because he hit him at the right spot, unfortunately, and I regretfully so. So that's what manslaughter would be considered. I don't even think he should have been charged with manslaughter. It should have been a self-defense case, just like with George Zimmerman beating, killing Trayvon Martin. They tried to go to the bare minimum, calling it child abuse, just to get something. But that was, I wouldn't even say that was murder because but then again, maybe he was. I think he had his sheet on the bed. The timing was just perfect for him. He didn't get to put his sheet on before he came out and took a life. Oh, there go a black man, because that's all it takes. We've seen that with Ahmaud Arbery. He's just walking around looking at vacant homes, and what happened to him? The boy that had autism, who told them everything wasn't right with him, and they still didn't give a damn. It's just so many different scenarios where we have people who don't necessarily have to wear sheets now. They just have to get hired for the right position to be able to do it, what they want to do to black people. But the point is, black people don't go around messing with people. Show me a video where black people are riding around in affluent neighborhoods full of white people. When we go out and protest, and people complain about this, but I'm making a point, we are in our communities. When all of the damage is done, it's in the communities we live in. Maybe we don't own those things, but those are things that we have direct access to that are in our communities. And when we go out and protest, we go into public facilities. We may go to the courthouse. We may stand out in the streets downtown and in different areas, the Capitol, but we don't go into the neighborhoods of predominantly white communities and march up and down the street to intimidate them or to cause havoc in any way, shape, or form. We don't see a white man walking up the street and ask him where you going or what's going on with you. Now, if you look suspect, if you walking around like Kyle Rittenhouse, who got off after walking into a peaceful protest and killing people, then yeah, it makes sense to ask somebody what the hell you doing walking around with a gun. That makes sense, right? I'm thinking about other situations. There was a man, and again, this is when my notes were coming to, be good right now, where this man, boy, college student, raped a girl. He raped her while she was unconscious. Bill Cosby her. Bill, I don't know if it was a pill involved. And let me not, anyway. Y'all know what I'm talking about, okay? But he raped this lady who was also a college student, and the judge was, felt for him. He felt for him because he said, this is a young white man who has such a promising future, and I don't want to ruin his life by locking him up and throwing away the key. So I'm going to give you probation. You have a future, young man. Meanwhile, that girl who was violated will spend the rest of her life and her future living with that violation. And, I pray that, she gets the peace that she needs and deserves. But this is the kind of stuff that happens with white people. Again, we be minding our business and people come bothering us. And if this keeps happening, at some point, it's going to be snap mode. You're going to run across the right one. You don't see us in neighborhoods doing these things to people, but you always hear the stories of a Becky or a Karen, some white man. There was a story, some white man came in with a big gun. I think it was an AK to a pool because the kids were in the pool. They were in the pool, minding their business, having a good time, cooling off. And then you got Metcalf, the father of the boy who was killed, calling him, did he say watermelon, Anthony? And it's like, oh, we already knew We already know. We know these kids don't just wake up and be racist. We know these kids don't just wake up and be prejudiced. We know these kids don't just wake up with a sense of entitlement. We know these kids don't just wake up and decide that they are superior and that a black boy minding his business and trying to stay out of the rain and stood up to you and said, no, I'm not going anywhere. You don't run me. You know what I'm saying? On people, I answer to my mom and daddy, and sometimes I might not even do that, and I'm just ad libbing. But the point I'm making is, who are you to try to tell him where to go and where to be? Why don't you go get someone to help? Y'all want to blame him for defending himself. Oh, he could have just left the tent. Then I had another video, Judge Hatchett. If you guys don't know her, she's a TV judge. I don't know if she's a real judge. They call her a judge, and she says she's a judge. So, okay. But this is a black woman, okay, who got on social media, again, saying, why did he even have a knife at school? Two things that are not true. He wasn't at school, and he didn't have a knife. Can you get your facts together before you get on here and tell us, go on a public platform and say, why didn't he just leave the tent? Not, why didn't they just leave him alone? Why didn't they just go get an adult to escort him out if they felt like he might steal something of theirs so bad? Like, you protected yourself so bad? Like, she had the nerves to say that, and that's the kind of stuff that pisses me off. We want to blame people and make them the villain, and you don't even have all the facts. At least go read the transcripts and know the facts, or refrain from having a position until you know the facts. Again, I thank you all who are watching live on Facebook and YouTube, hanging with your girl. You can still chat, chime in the conversation. I can read your comments. I am ad-libbing today. I literally have no notes in front of me, so I'm just remembering what I documented and what I wanted to discuss today. So I feel like I'm going to leave a lot out before we close out. But I said, oh, well, I'll just go ahead and do it anyway, right? So that is what bothers me the most about this. You even have people saying, well, he should have got a lesser charge. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I've seen the story. I mean, you have so many people that have gotten off for literally waking up and deciding to take a life, going out meddling with people that cause the demise of an innocent person who are not in jail. You have, what was it, Kyle Rittenhouse? No, that wasn't the white boy who literally went into a church and killed 9 people. Before they took him to the jail, they stopped and got him Burger King. It's the whole entitlement of the situation. It's the whole, the cultural conditioning of the situation, where people really think that certain people deserve certain treatment because you can see the humanity in them. But when it comes to people with dark skin, with melanated features and skin and features, then they don't get that same respect. They don't get that same common courtesy and decency. There's no humanity directed towards them. And I want to say that they just don't see us as humans, but then I would have to say that that would make them really sick, because many of them still roll in the hay with them. We roll this tape all the way back to enslavement, when they were stealing people and bringing them here. These men were sleeping with these people that they called non-human, called them animals, and said they had tails, and taught their kids that they had tails, and that they couldn't share pools with them, eat with them, drink with them, saying all of these negative things, untrue things about people, but at the same time allowing these very same people that they were raping, that they were calling animals, to breastfeed their babies. Why would you be letting that milk come from the bosom of a black woman? Make it make sense. But like I said, there's plenty of stories of white men in particular being charged with having sex with animals. I forget the term for that. I mean, horses, dogs. There was someone who was in a political position. His wife put him on Front Street and accused him of sleeping with their family dog. Yeah, poking, having sex with, raping the family dog. Poor doggy. Poor doggy. Oh my goodness. So I'm so happy now that they are raising money, that an appeal is in effect. You think about, even with the judge, they said that the judge has some type of relationship outside of work, even with the attorneys. That means the defense and the prosecution. Also, and when it comes to the attorney, that whole judicial clique, I can understand how they would all kind of know each other and socialize with each other, but that judge should have recused himself, right? Why didn't that attorney ask for this particular case to be heard and seen outside of that county? Because there was going to be a lot of biases. We've seen that happen with, remember, even with the when the police with the Rodney King verdict, for example. They had to, yeah, they couldn't do it in the same city. That wasn't going to work out. It wasn't going to be to the advantage of the police officers. There were a lot of angry people, black people and others, in regards to what those police officers had did to Rodney King. And then there were a lot of people who are pro-police. It doesn't matter whether they're good or bad. They just support them because they wear the badge and would have, gotten them off just like these 12 jurors did. Why didn't, if you, and they're paying you, you're not a public defender. I understand it, and it's still not right because these people that go into these positions, that's even in the medical field, but as an attorney, you swear to not be biased, to do your job to the best of your ability. And, that's why we can look at people who may defend people who may be known serial killers. Like, as an attorney, you're a defense attorney, but in your heart of hearts, this man is a serial killer, but you're going to get him off on the legal aspects and the information in front of that's presented to the jurors and the things that they have to look at. Karmelo Anthony's attorney sucked, which makes me think it was intentional. He had every intention, and they only interviewed the mother. So were they really? I mean, where was the defense? Again, I mentioned that this young man was on his way to college, worked two jobs, lived in a two-parent household. Was an athlete. I don't know if he was a star athlete, but he was an athlete. He was drinking his water and minding his business and looking forward to the future. And you could have brought on teachers. You could have brought on his peers, family members. The only person that attorney, his paid attorney, brought to the witness stand was the mother. And from what I heard, they asked her maybe one or two questions, and one of them was, "Do you love your son?" And the second was, "Would you do anything for him?" This is what this is the questions. And then the prosecution did not do any follow-up. This was the defense attorney that's what he decided to bring up. So you can't tell me that attorney did not sabotage that. He should lose his old ass license for taking them people money and doing what he did. But I'm glad people are raising money for him so that he can have top-notch representation. Another thing that one of the takeaways that we have to stress to our children, to our adults, to anybody who is approached by authorities and asked any questions about anything, especially if they're looking like a suspect. You do not answer any questions without the presence of your attorney. You have that right. So if they're asking you what happened, I'm sure Karmelo was, distraught. They said how he, was responding. Yeah, I did it. And he was saying why. But he should have just sat there with his mouth shut tight and waited for his dad and mom to show up and their attorney to get the information, and the proper attorney. The parents were also advised not to get a black attorney. So that's why he had a white attorney, because they were listening to the advice of who they thought were the experts, people who got the letters in front and behind their name, right, with the degrees, who knows how this goes. Because a lot of being an attorney is, you got to know how to do the jury pool, which they did. The prosecution did excellent with that, right? But the Constitution says that you're entitled to a jury of your peers. The only thing I think they really got right is a speedy trial. Was it fair? No, but it was speedy, because I know people that still ain't went to court. I mean, even Diddy's case, how long was he locked up before he went to actual trial? They couldn't wait to lock him up, because you know how much money you get for a kid? And they want you fresh and young. And then I wanted to do the research, and I didn't get around to it, but I wanted to do the research on a study, because I'm sure there's a study out there that describes how long a person would need to be incarcerated for them to be known to be institutionalized, or to get a certain amount of monetary gain out of them, financially. How long do you need to keep a person incarcerated to get certain things from them? Because they know the prison, the pipeline thing. They know that if a kid doesn't have, it's not at reading age, by a certain age, if he's not reading fluently by a certain age, studies show that these kids usually end up in the system, right? And so I'm sure there's something, they give them that number. Yeah, they want to lock them up and throw away the key, but a lot of times they'll let you out. After 35 years, they'll let you out. I used to listen to a show every Wednesday, Exonerating. Now, it was so many men that would be locked up for 30 years, and then they let them out. And it's no big deal. They're not going to apologize, and you're not going to get restitution. You're not going to get any type of money back. You can't even get a job. You've been falsely accused. You spent 30 plus years in prison, maybe 10, maybe less, maybe more than 30. Because I've heard some, they were 40 years. Some still locked up. But the point is, they're getting something out. There's something more than just the fact that they get to lock up a black man, because that's a white man, the racist white man's wet dream, right? that's not an issue. But even further down the line, what else are they getting out of this? What benefits are they getting out of institutionalizing and then letting you out? So that's another thing to think about. I pray that this young man is given a second chance to sit in front of a jury of his peers and not what we witnessed with and that's not to say just because they're black, everybody is your color's not your kind. But the point of having people on that look like you is having increasing the probability of having people who have had similar lived experiences as you. We talked about that. What Drewski's pushback was with people having similar lived experiences in the acting field. And to me, again, kind of just bouncing around discussing Drewski again, is if that's your pushback, that these actors that are coming from another country shouldn't be able to come in here and act like they know how to act in reference to American experiences because they weren't from here. I think that makes you an even better actor. If you can pull that off, not having the lived experiences and still be believable. I'm not saying it ain't coming off good because I've seen, who was it? Was it A$AP Rocky I saw in a movie? I was like, no, you need more practice. It was an actor and he would just, you could tell he was just reading his lines. There was no passion, there was no emotion. And I'm knowing when you're around regular people, you don't talk like that. I mean, he didn't even talk in a way that we talk when we're in certain environments. So if these actors are coming into Hollywood, and again I'm using Hollywood because that's what Drewski drilled in on, Hollywood not giving us jobs and going outsourcing jobs, kind of like the same thing we had going on here in the United States where people talking about Mexicans taking a job and all these foreigners taking a job, blaming other people for whatnot. But when it comes to us, we cannot divide ourselves because that's what they want. They want us to fight against each other. We don't need a seat at their table. We have all the tools and resources to build our own. Remember, that's why they grabbed us up, because they knew how brilliant we are. We are. You can go see the pyramids. They still trying to figure it out. They want to get a credit to aliens now. You know what I'm saying? Because they can't just give the black man the credit. Even what's his name? The guy who talks about um, space all the time. I used to watch him. He had a show, and I can't think of his name, but he even made a point. He went on to the Shay Shay show, talking about where did the humans originate from, and he made it very clear, which is something most of us already know, that it's not going to be taught to our kids in school because we don't want black people to have high self-esteem, or at least they don't. They don't want them to have confidence in who they are and pride in where they come from. But the original man and woman came from the continent of Africa. The same place that they, want to call people African booty snatchers and joke about watermelon. And it's so ignorant. Not only is racism ignorant, this whole setup is ignorant. You got people that want to call people monkeys because of their nose and their lips, but then I cannot find a lipstick without it saying plumping. Like everybody want big lips. Everybody walking around with extra booty. Everybody sitting in the sun baking. You know what I'm saying? And everybody's all over social media saying how beneficial watermelon is. We knew that. We knew that when we were out in them fields picking that cotton, that watermelon was going to keep us hydrated and fortified with the minerals and vitamins that we needed. And these people didn't understand it, ignorant as hell, and all they could come up with is basically that, that's what we like, stereotyping us and teasing us and not even knowing the science and the truth and the brilliance of why we do what we do, why we are who we are. And yeah, so I'm getting this open, so I might be able to get my notes up
Do
to
you
make
want
sure
to know why you
I
should buy
haven't
this
missed anything. I don't
$40
know where I'm
AI
at
stock?
right now,
It's a
but let me just.
pre-IPO backdoor into a
Oh
private
Lord!
startup that
Now I got
Time
the sound
Magazine
going.
calls
Hold
the
on, you
most
guys. I'm gonna
disruptive
mute.
company in the world.
I got
I'm Mark
background
Chaikin.
going,
I created one of Wall Street's most popular indicators, a
and it doesn't.
powerful tool found on every
Y'all, this
Bloomberg and
is
Reuters
crazy. Let me
terminal
see
on
if
the
I can
planet.
mute.
Today, I
All right. All right. I still have an echo. Okay, so I did all that muted. So I was saying this has been a day. I've had just a whole hour and almost a half of technical difficulties. Shout out to Shanta, who said I didn't need my notes. And so I'm looking at them now, and I think I covered mostly everything. It was just a bunch of clips that I wanted to play. And so I won't even get into those because, oh my goodness, it's just a wild experience I'm having here, you guys. You have no idea what I'm experiencing right now, but we have people like Jasmine Crockett speaking out on behalf of Carmelo Anthony. We had, a couple of white people that had something to say about his treatment, and maybe I can get those clips in as well. I got to get out of this other thing because I do not want this up at all. So let me see if I can close this out. Lord, this is crazy. Okay. That's gone. Thank you. Woo! This has been something else, but I'm going to pat myself on the back for getting through this and remembering most of what I wanted to talk about. But let me get some of these clips in. Again, I wanted to put in talk about Drewski again and what his point of view was on the actors coming in and taking our jobs, in the Hollywood arena. But I also wanted to close out. This is one thing that I didn't remember to mention was I wanted to close out asking the question of what do we do? When are we going to get tired and pack up and leave? Like, and where are we going? Like, there. Shout out to Ashley B, who's on YouTube, and she, talks about a woman who did that in a different way. It was more on a personal level with the relationship, but the quote was basically asking the question, and that was, when is enough enough? Basically, when do you leave? And the quote ended with her saying, what I'm about to repeat here, if I can get that up. I got everything up but that. This is what a day, what a day. So my question is, who's ready to leave America? And Ashley B was quoting a lady in a past time named Mira Mabah. And she said, leaving is a deliverance of one who can no longer endure. Leaving is a deliverance of one who can no longer endure. And I just say that because when do we make the exodus? When do we leave? There's a story of that, and she talks about that too. And I had it up on YouTube, but I'm not even going to play with YouTube. So I'll play the clip. And then I guess we'll just we'll try this again next week, or maybe I'll do a pop up in the middle of the week because this was a whole hot mess. So this is Ashley B talking about what it looks like to make an exodus, an exit.
People love to say, well, if it was so bad after slavery, why didn't y'all just leave? Like that's some genius solution that nobody ever thought of. Well, guess what? We did in 1879. And we left in big enough numbers to make plantation owners nervous. Let that sink in. Yeah. Because emancipation didn't magically fix anything. Reconstruction gave people a taste of protection, a taste of political power, a taste of possibility. And then 1877 comes and federal troops pull out. The old Redeemer governments tighten their grip. Violence rises, voter intimidation rises. Sharecropping traps families in debt that feels uncomfortably familiar. You're free, but you can't vote without risking your life. You're free, but you owe the same man who used to own you. You're free, but the protection that you were promised is gone. And I try to imagine that moment. You survived slavery. You survived a war. You survived hope rising and then being snatched back. And now you're standing on land that keeps taking from you. At some point, you look at your children and you think, we cannot keep doing this here. They call themselves the Exodusters, Exodus, on purpose, as in we're walking out again. Biblical, right? Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. Whole families packing up what little they had. Some left crops in the ground. Some sold what they could. Some left in the middle of planting season. Thousands boarded steamboats up the Mississippi River. Others took trains or wagons headed to Kansas. But Kansas wasn't random. Kansas had free soil history, anti-slavery symbolism. It represented something different. Not perfect, but different. And sometimes when you've been suffocating, different is enough. And here's the part that really gets me. So many Black people left that plantation owners, many of them former enslavers, were furious. They weren't mourning families, though. They were angry about losing labor. The U.S. Senate held hearings in 1880 to try to figure out why Black people were leaving the South to be saved. We were moving in numbers big enough to scare Southern politicians and disrupt plantation labor. Yeah, that is straight up calculation. Now, Kansas wasn't heaven, of course. People arrived and faced hunger, disease, broken promises, and racism didn't magically disappear because you crossed the state line. Some settlements struggled hard, but they built anyway. Nicodemus, Kansas, founded in 1877 and settled heavily by Exodusters. It still exists today. And when I think about that, it does something to me, you know? Because we're always taught Black history as endurance, as staying, as surviving what's being thrown at us, as absorbing the blows and calling it strength. But the Exodusters weren't absorbing, they were relocating. They looked at the conditions and said, nah, this math does not work. And they were willing to uproot everything rather than keep feeding a system that was designed to destroy them. That's emotional because leaving isn't easy. Leaving means uncertainty. Leaving means hunger risk. Leaving means you might be wrong. But staying felt worse. So when somebody casually asks, why didn't they just leave? I don't get loud anymore. I just say, we did. And I let that sit. Because that version of us, strategic, relentless, unwilling to keep suffering quietly, that's a story that we don't tell enough.
Thank you, Marmac, for joining us. He said he just barely made the tail end of the show. Listen, it was a whole ride, okay? You missed a lot, and it's going to be a hot mess because I had a lot of technical issues, but I hope that you guys got something out of it still. But yeah, he's saying that, yeah, he's not a fan of leaving what we built. I agree. And the thing is, while we built this, why do we still have to tell our kids how to respond to police officers? Why we built this, why do we still have to conform to a society that doesn't respect us? Why we built this, why are we still teaching our kids that they can't get away with the same things that the other kids can get away with it that don't look like us? I mean, I even remember in school where, the young white girls, they could wear their little poom shorts, as we call them, little short shorts, but Black girls couldn't. We were built differently and they sexualized us. How they do with boys. They want to call Karmelo Anthony a man, but he's not, he's a boy. But then when they're describing this, 6'1", 210-pound twin who succumbed to his death after bullying young Anthony, Karmelo Anthony, he's a boy, right? There's video. I had video of people describing what happened. I had two different scenarios of that. But why are we here? And if we're going to stay, yes, we built it. What are we doing to hold on to it? What are we doing to change it and make it to where it's our house and not their house? Because their house is not conducive to our comfort and, our livability. And so that's the question. Again, quoting Miriam Ba, who says, leaving is a deliverance of one who can no longer endure. Leaving is the deliverance of one who can no longer endure. Or we can do what some do. We fight back. We fight and we get them off us. We get them off our backs. We get them off our necks. and we come up off our knees and we don't ask them for anything. We make our demands. Read up on Nat Turner. Look what they had to do to him after the rebellion. I have a book here, Burn Down Master's House, which is fictional, but it tells true stories, modified, about people who were on the plantation who did, in fact, poison those who enslaved them, because we cooked for them, right? And literally burned down their homes and did certain things to get them off their backs, to keep them from trying to bully them, from getting out of the tent. I don't know where the sense of entitlement, I do know where the sense of entitlement comes from. We all know what it is. But still, we say we built this, but we're teaching our kids how to address police officers. We're teaching our kids that we can't respond in the same way that other people can respond. We're teaching our kids to basically be subservient to some degree. Or, as a mother, I would say, to make it home, back to me. It's sad. It really is. It really is sad. Yeah, so I guess I didn't do too bad. I didn't get to play all of my clips. You had this father again calling Karmelo Watermelon Anthony. Just disrespectful. You know what I'm saying? And then you wonder where these kids get it from. The apple does not fall too far from the tree. You have the mother who's saying she's going to fight. This is the young, just thinking of this father, the white man who, this is what he had to say.
Mello, okay? I'm racist up young and go viral.
I'll start it over.
I got a new name for Mello. Okay?
This is the father of the deceased speaking out.
I'm racist up young and go viral. I got a new name for Mello, okay? Because he was such this little boy y'all was trying to portray. How about Watermelon Felon? How's that one strike yet?
Watermelon Felon,
I'm
that's what
racist
he
up
called
young
him.
and go viral. I got a new name for Mello, okay? Oh, because the gag order is lifted. Tiffany Billions, Wackadoo, McAdoo, whatever her last name is. I'm not going to throw insults at you because I'm not going to lower myself to your level. But you're despicable. Drew Anthony, Kayla, you're cowards. You wouldn't even show up for your son's sentencing or victim statement impact. You abandoned your kid. You left him there. I guess he's no more use to you because you can't get any more GoFundMe money or Go Send Go money. You are grifters. You should be ashamed of yourself.
You should be
You
ashamed
raised
of
that
yourself.
child.
Raise
And I
your
swear
kids
to
to be
God,
racist.
CPS to come check on those other 3 that you still have. You never once admitted or took accountability. You tried to play victim. The real victim is the one who died, not the one who shoved a knife in his chest.
It wasn't a knife. It was not a knife.
I come to pray with you and show the world we can close the gap of this unbelievable racial divide. And what'd you do? You widen the gap even further. You hire a convicted baby-shaking felon who's only in it for the money, who gives you bad advice, kicks me out of a press conference. Oh, funny, I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be, but I left when asked. I didn't stab anyone.
Quick turn to Sam here with some hardcore receipts on the Austin Metcalf Karmelo Anthony trial aftermath. Jeff Metcalf got on TikTok Live and showed you his completely racist side. For him to sit there and say this wasn't about race, and this video I'm about to show you gives you an idea into how these twins were raised and how we ended up here and how they were most likely talking to Karmelo. Look at what Jeff Metcalf had to say about slavery.
Even though they did wrong, you're going to support someone who does something against the law. You're encouraging and saying it's okay because he's a certain color. Oh, you got more melanin than me. Ooh, so you get more privileges, more entitlement? Because 400 years ago, someone actually sold you to us, and we took you over here and put you to work. And then we had a civil war to free your ass. And now you want to talk shit? Oh, I've been so oppressed. You couldn't even vote. 1960.
Quick Turtle Sam here with some hardcore receipts.
That's the father of the deceased. That's the father of the deceased. Okay, so but you didn't hear all that in the courtroom. And again, only the mother was allowed, was even questioned. Only the mother, which is strange. It's a lot when you think about all the other people that got off. This is Jasmine Crockett, Representative, Texas.
Crockett, you might have seen that Karmelo Anthony was sentenced to 35 years. I want to get your reaction to the trial and the verdict.
My heart breaks for so many reasons. And so I was just speaking to a student that is shadowing me who wants to be a public defender. And so it takes me back to what actually made me decide to get into this legislative work in the first place, because I know that our systems are broken. And what we saw with that verdict is the evidence of a broken system. Now, listen, from everything that I understand, which I wasn't at the trial because obviously I got a day job, but it's my understanding that Karmelo ended up stabbing, puncturing, I don't know what this tool was that they talk about, knife, or some refer to it as a tool. He ended up hitting Austin one time, and it was about where he hit him. One time, 2 inches. This wasn't someone who said, hey, let me stab you 5, 6, 7 times. And so when you're looking at the punishment range, there's a reason in Texas that it goes from 5 to 99 or life, because you are looking at how intentional, like how bad was this? 35 years for a kid who had decided to go under a tent that was not his team's tent as it was raining, and simply didn't want to be put out in the rain by some random kid that he didn't know who was larger than him. Listen, a lot of people don't know what it is to live as a Black person in this country, but just like you can give the benefit of the doubt to so many police officers when they go out and they shoot some Black unarmed person, even though they are trained, the fact that there was little to no mercy seen or humanity seen when this Black boy said that I was scared, or the fact that honestly anybody else who did something with such a small object, all I know is that it wasn't considered unlawful carrying of a weapon because the blade was not long enough, that they wouldn't even say, well, maybe this was more so something that looked like manslaughter.
Well, some people might say, why are you even bringing a knife like that to a track meet?
Yeah, people may say that, but walk a day in my shoes and then respond. Because we as Black folks say, why is it that people need long armed guns when we are going out and having a First Amendment protest? But people say that's their right. They are allowed to do that. And again, it wasn't against the law for him to have it. It may have been prohibited by school rules, which he wasn't at his school at the time. But it definitely was not against the law.
So you think race played a role in the verdict?
Oh my God. I know Collin County. So absolutely. Collin County is right north of Dallas County. And I can tell you that I have had cases that I felt like played out differently because of the counties that they were in. And unfortunately, that was not the county for a Black boy.
Crockett.
2 verdicts.
Okay. And then there's this young lady, again, that I was mentioning earlier, a white woman whose brother was killed by being jumped. And she had her perspective on this as well. Talking about just the biases in the situation. We're going to close out in a minute. We lost some time because of the delay. So I thank you all who stick it with your girl. I appreciate you for those who hopped on late and those who watched later on Facebook and YouTube. You guys comment, share your thoughts. I really would appreciate it. I will engage you. Marmac is to continue to add to the conversation as we talk about why do we stay here. He says, this is why we need more politicians, lawyers, doctors, financial experts, and less athletes, musicians, and entertainers. I agree. I think there's space for all of us because they play a role as well. I think about somebody like Aretha Franklin, who was an entertainer. You know, she carried a person around wherever she went, and you know, she put her money where her mouth is. That's my nose now. My nose usually acts up when I get 90 minutes in. It's just so weird how my body knows it's time to go. But anyways, yes, I agree. We need more, and not entertainment lawyers, but we need more of us in positions. We need more physicians. We need more doctors. People who see us, people who understand what our lived experiences are. So I agree with you 100%. But for those who are in positions to use their talents in the music industry and other ways, I don't take anything away from you either. So this is a young lady who was giving the backstory of her brother and her perspective on what's happening with young Karmelo Anthony.
My brother was jumped and stabbed to death 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
So naturally, people ask how I feel about Karmelo Anthony. 35 years, and my answer might make some people uncomfortable. I don't see a monster. I see a kid who was scared. My brother was jumped, he was stabbed to death, and he was the one being attacked, and he didn't have a thing in his hands to stop it. Now, I have spent the last 20 years asking a question that I can't put down. What if my brother had a knife that night? Would he be alive? Would he have been the one who walked away because he protected himself? And if he had, would they have called him a murderer? Would they have given him 35 years? And that's what I see in Karmelo, a kid who was being jumped, a kid who was being antagonized, a scared kid who reached for the only thing that meant he might make it home. He lived, and living got him 35 years. And that's a sentence I don't believe that his white peers would get in that same state. See, the boy who killed my brother is a grown man now. He was 17 when he did it, and he didn't get arrested for 17 years. For 17 years, he knew what he did, and he never came forward.
And that was her takeaway. Yeah. So, that's my perspective. I think that's messed up. I think that's messed up that they gave him 35 years. And I pray that, this is reversed, that he comes home. He doesn't belong in prison. And again, I'm not celebrating the death of the young boy. I wish none of that had happened. But I think there needs to be a message sent, because we just be minding our business. We're not, we don't go into the neighborhoods, predominantly white communities, predominantly Asian communities, predominantly whatever other communities, and stir the pot. We don't go picking on people and messing with people. They say, crime is proximity. We're the only people that have the term black on black crime, right? Even though if you go look at the statistics, the majority of white people cause crime against white people. The majority of Asian people commit crimes against Asian people, and the same for black. But we're the only people that have that terminology, black on black crime. And the reason being is going back to devaluing us, marginalizing us, minimizing us, and making it seem like we're the animals and we're villains. So a lot of the things that do happen are in proximity to us. But we don't go out messing with other people, and they come to us. I just gave you the story of Trump's dad went into Jamaica town, so this is what we're up against. And I thank you guys for your patience, for hanging with your girl. That was a really rough ride. And I guess sometimes it bees like that, right? I hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Let me go ahead and formally thank you guys. Y'all know how I do. I had to get my thank you up and get my little clap in. I got a new clap. Let me try that. I'll just go ahead and do what I know. They have a little StreamYard clap. Let me try that. But no, I'll just do what I do. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Thank you for chatting. That is my favorite part, when you guys engage me and share your thoughts. Thank you for your patience today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. I will be back next Saturday. We got to get an after dark in, so I got to talk to my crew and see how everybody's schedules are going to line up. I know everybody's kind of busy right now, so I understand that. But again, I appreciate you guys, and thank you so much. And I'll be back next Saturday. It's all love and respect. Okay.